between the two of them.
The inside of Coates.
Barker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the VRRC and the second half of the season in the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship. We arrive down in the southeast at the flat open plains of Norfolk and the Sneterton 300 circuit to kickstart the second half of what has been already a fantastic season, a really competitive season of racing. We've had some truly excellent racing across all four of the preceding events, and I'm sure that week number 5 will be no different. Delighted to say that it's Andy McEwan rejoining you from the commentary box this weekend after a week off last week, joined by the very familiar voice of Jack Oliphant, who was at Alton Park, the virtual Alton Park, at least a week ago. And Jack, from the little bits of the evening that I managed to tune in for, it looked like it was, let's go with lively.
Yes. Oh, my days. Yeah, there we go. My voice is back. Yes, it was lively, to say the least. I think the second race especially, I suppose we've come to expect that from a reverse grid drive. But yeah, the first race was a bit more Alton Park style. You know, it's a bit down the line. It was a bit not processional, but you know, Nicky Taylor ended up coming home with the victory there. And once he got into the lead from pole position, it wasn't really ever in doubt. And then, yeah, race 2 was definitely lively. There was quite a bit of contact, but a lot of fast drivers trying to get to the very front. As we know, Alton Park is a tricky place to go. It really does separate the quality of drivers in terms of out-and-out pace, and weight can also cause a massive issue there as well. But Nicky Taylor did come home with the most amount of points, as you can see, 42. Drawing, though, with Elliot Daltonaires, who also had another good evening, even though I don't remember saying his name that often, which, again, is pretty much how Elliot Daltonaires operates, really. Jack Smith, as well, with a very heavy car, that rear-wheel drive BMW, seemed to be operating well, just as it does in real life around Alton Park at the hands of Colin Turkington. Jack Smith seems to have the knack of it as well. Kenny Press with a brilliant race too, got driver of the round, and he even finally started to use the hybrid button, Andy. I know you won't believe me when I say that, but Kenny Press has found the hybrid button, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we can get on this evening as well. I think if he can use it a bit more often, we may well see him get a podium come the end of this season.
I think so, and I think there are a couple of drivers who have been sort of knocking on the door of those really good results as the first half of the season's gone on. You know, these touring cars are always a little bit tricky to get to grips with. It's the first time we've used these particular touring cars, and inevitably there are drivers who will take longer than others to get up to speed. Plus, lots of new drivers on the grid this season, and we've seen a few of them really impressing as the season's gone on so far. So, yeah, really looking forward to seeing how that second half of the season pans out for those drivers. It's the second half of the season that starts, as I've mentioned already, at Sneterton, and arriving here at Sneterton, Jack Smith, the championship leader. This is with dropped scores taken into account, so with each driver's worst week or lowest scored week taken away. Jack Smith arrives here with, what's that, a 16 points lead, yes, maths, 16-point lead over Jack Smith, over Elliot Daltonaires, with Scott Bugner only 3 points further back, Carl Felvers 3 points behind him, and Oliver Gibson 2 further back in 5th position. Then a bit of a jump back to Joel Lask, a lowly 6th, Josh Martin an even lowlier 7th, and Eric Axelson an even more lowlier 8th place. Those 3 drivers all a bit further back than you'd expect, whilst Jordan Taylor and Andy Dorman, you could argue the opposite of, really, joint 9th. So far in the championship. Jordan Taylor, his debut season with us. Andy Dorman, we know, a bit of a touring car specialist, and therefore perhaps we shouldn't be too surprised, Jack, to see him inside the top 10.
No, I'm loving watching Andy driving, and obviously Jordan is a new face amongst the sort of top runners, so it's exciting to see how he deals with these sort of, I suppose, the well-known drivers in the VRRC Championship. Another note on Jack Smith as well, how impressive that 134 points is. Obviously, Andy just mentioned there's drop rounds, isn't there? Well, Jack Smith also has the worst round, if you can get your head around that as well. He's dropped to the 29-point round, whereas everybody else around him, apart from Scott Bugner. Oh, actually, I tell a lie. My apologies, actually. Felvers and Gibson have dropped to 31-point rounds. So actually, 4th and 3rd place, probably feeling like they're slightly unlucky not to be a little bit higher up, but you never know. It's I'll probably try and get my head around this eventually. I have thrown Lewis is running order out the window as well a little bit with going straight into the last round. I can hear him giggling in the background. So we'll go straight into the next round and what we've seen and what we're coming up against in a minute as well, because there they are. Donington Park, Brands Hatch, Indy, Croft and Alton Park rounded out the first half of this championship. Snetterton is where we are today, as Andy said. Thruxton, Brands Hatch GP and Silverstone is how we round out this particular touring car season. And Andy, I have to say, after Alton Park, Brands Hatch, Donington Park, they're all very hilly and everything like that. Snetterton and Thruxton offer a bit of a different kettle of fish, don't they?
They do indeed, and in fact are very different from each other even, although you're right, they're both based on former airfields, and so they are fairly flat, not too much undulation really, but Snetterton a tight, technical, twisting circuit, Thruxton really anything but, and then we head to really the two great circuits, the two most famous circuits, certainly here on British shores, Brands Hatch, the full Grand Prix circuit, and Silverstone, also the full Grand Prix circuit. We don't often get the chance to race actually on the full GP loop here at the VRRC. So very, very much looking forward to that. Right then, next, before we go into the hot lap, do you know we're both determined to ignore the running order that Lewis Edwards has poured his heart and soul into, and we've been following for a number of weeks already. But indeed, we do still first have to take a look at what is up for grabs for our drivers who are competing in the championship this season. As always at the VRRC, we are making sure the drivers are well catered for with a Cammus wheelbase and a first place trophy for our eventual champion. In fact, the top three all receiving a trophy at the end of the season. Second place receiving the Aegon 34-inch gaming monitor, and then a handbrake and shifter courtesy of TM for the third placed driver. Fourth place gets 2 hours of sim practice at VRRC HQ and 1 hour of sim practice for the fifth place driver. Then there's also the prize draw for any driver who has completed in at least 7 of the 8 rounds but is not placed within the top 5. They are entered into a prize draw, the winner of which receives 2 1-hour sim practice sessions at the VRRC. There's the driver of the round who receives the driver of the round medal and a jacket courtesy of our other sponsors, NGK, and the top scorer for the week receives the NGK hat. We've also got new for this season, and I know many of you in the YouTube chat have been enjoying this, have we got an official name for this? I keep calling them the fan of the week. I'm not convinced that's actually the official title, but anyway, whoever impresses us, catches our eye, makes us laugh, is there with the inspirational quotes and comments in the YouTube chat, then you will receive another prize courtesy of NGK, which will be given to a different viewer each week. So get your comments in. Right then, whilst myself and Jack go and revise the running order so that we don't ignore Lewis Edwards over the rest of the evening, let's take a look, shall we, around the full Sneterton 300 circuit.
Welcome to Snetterton for round 5 of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship Season 4. Heading now towards turn 1. We're on the hybrid at the moment. We're going to be braking slightly earlier, down into 4th gear and then quickly back to 5th when we get back to the power. Important to carry good momentum throughout the corner there. It's the hairpin you want to brake before this 2 diagonal line marker board, down to 2nd gear, fight some wheel spin on the exit. We managed to control it nicely. So we're going to go back over to the right hand side. You want to take quite a late apex for this left hander, making sure you can get hard on the power and not run too wide on the exit. Heading towards Agostini now. Again, you want to brake before this first marker board, and then we're going to go down to 2nd gear, take a very late apex and get really sharply back to the power, controlling the oversteer on the exit there. Into Hamilton now, we're going to hold it in 4th, carry as much speed in as you dare, and back over to the left hand side for Oggies. You want to focus on getting a good exit here, don't run too wide on the initial part of it, and then get a good run towards this right hander. Important to get a really nice exit here as we're going onto the back straight now. Back on the hybrid, definitely a place for slipstream and overtaking from the racers. It gives you a little bit of a breather for this very tricky little chicane section here. We're going to brake down into 4th gear, then 3rd. You've got to balance it on the brakes really nicely through there. Important to get another good exit through bomb hole, completely flat out, no issues with the hybrid on. And then we're into Corum. Just got to balance the car as best as you can through here, just focusing on making sure you carry that momentum and back over to the right hand side for the final corner. Again, focusing on the exit, and then it's all just about the run up to the line, and that completes a very fast paced lap of Snetterton.
So qualifying underway then here this evening at Sneterton, and well, with the second half of the season kicking off now, this is a particularly important session really. Qualifying always important, especially given how competitive the grid is this season. We've seen quite a lot in recent memory that the driver who qualifies on pole for race 1 tends to go on and win it. In fact, almost throughout the entirety of our GTV3 season that was the case. This time around we have had pole position converted to race 1 win happen 3 times. The only driver so far to have qualified on pole position and not won race 1, Jack, is...
Oh, I don't know. Oh, yeah, it must be Ollie Gibson. Yeah, but Lewis is right. I'll be honest, Lewis has given me that answer. But yeah, the Brands Hatch race 1.
I'm so sorry, Jack. I threw you under the bus completely for my own amusement.
Scott Bugner who won it, though, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Okay, so you get a point back for that.
Yeah, I'll take
Jack.
it.
Yeah, well done. But yes, generally speaking, Jack, pole position for race 1's been the place to be. Snetterton, though, it does present a couple more overtaking opportunities, I would say, in some of the tracks we've raced at so far. So do you expect the same sort of story tonight?
I think it's going to be a bit harder for whoever qualifies on pole. I mean, to be fair though, it's not like Croft doesn't have good overtaking opportunities, or Brands Hatch. I mean, you have to set the move up, but I mean, you do see it happen quite a bit. The only real track we've been to so far when I'm thinking, pole position is guaranteed a race victory is Alton Park, and Nicky Taylor did convert that, and he's looking pretty strong here today as well. I like Snetterton. It's not everybody's favourite sort of layout. The 300 offers a little bit more about it. I'm not a fan of the 200, I'll be honest, but the longer layout, it does offer some more overtaking opportunities. I think it's quite a fun infield section. It's quite technical, quite, you do have to really have your car in the right place, unlike that BMW who's currently on the grass. So let's see. You never know. Clearly, Nicky Taylor likes it. Scott Bugner clearly is enjoying it, and well, Jack Smith is right up there once again, isn't it? So a mix of different manufacturers and return of the flying Swede. It's Eric Axelsson in second place.
He is second place, albeit half a second slower than Nicky Taylor. You have to feel that some drivers will slot into that gap before the session is done, but could see the Vauxhall a little bit closer to the pace so far. There you can see Eric Axelsson working away at the wheel as he makes his way through the left-hander at Palmer's. I'll be honest with you, Jack, I've got a bit of a love-hate relationship with Snetterton because to drive, I actually really enjoy it. It's my kind of track. I quite like these technical circuits where you've really got to be aggressive under braking and smooth on the accelerator coming off the corners, especially in a front-wheel drive car, but I don't know, it is one of those longer tracks, and because it crams a lot of corners into the 2.9 mile circuit length, it does tend to spread the field out a little bit more, and so I wonder whether we might see a bit of that, particularly in the first race of the evening. It also takes about 5.5 hours for me to get there, so perhaps that slightly clouds my judgment a little bit. Eric Axelsson on a strangely scrappy lap here, missed the apex a bit going through the hairpin and Agostini, dipped a wheel on the grass going into Palmer's, and he looks thoroughly fed up, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's as if he heard you and he looked into the camera and gave a massive sigh of disbelief as well. It's, we're usually so used to seeing him so smooth with his inputs and everything, and so accurate as well. It's the Eric Axelsson way, really. But it did seem that he's struggling a little bit. He's not quite happy with how it's going for him. But you know what? We're so used to seeing him at the front end, and I suppose he is at the front end at the moment, but I mean, winning and potentially winning by some margin. He's going to be disappointed if he's doing anything but. There's one driver we're nearly never disappointed in putting the camera on with the helmet. What does the helmet say on the side of it? It is Josh Martin, isn't it? I think it's slightly pixelated, but it does just say Josh Martin.
Well, this is an improvement upon a full suit, I have to say. This is a little bit more of an appropriate outfit to be wearing. I guess this means he's a pro sim racer now, doesn't it? That he's going to the effort of wearing not only racing gloves, that appears to be some sort of a racing branded T-shirt, and the full helmet as well. So
better than the construction site outfit he had on last week. He had a high vis and everything on last week. It was really giving off the village people vibes. I think for this is a lot more appropriate.
It is. It sadly isn't making him any quicker. He's still down in 13th place at the moment. 1.5 seconds, I think that is off the pace, although I reckon he's not necessarily put in a full representative lap time just yet. So let's get the Vauxhall Astra driver across the line. Interestingly, doesn't hug the pit wall as many drivers do to take the shortest route to the timing line. He goes through and, well, either that was an outlap or an invalidated lap. Either way, it wasn't an improvement, and based on the way he's just taken Rich's, Jack, I'm not guaranteeing that this one will be either.
No, it's slightly struggling, and it's quite interesting. I always got taught at Snetterton, how far he has to crank that wheel. I always got taught at Snetterton to hug that sort of pit wall on the right-hand side, just because there was almost like people theorised that there was a little pocket of air or something there, so you get less air resistance if you bite the pit wall. I have no idea whether that is actually true or not, but obviously on the sim, I don't imagine they'll have simulated it, even if it is real. But it is the shortest route to the line, and that's a nice late apex actually by Josh Martin as well. Where is he currently qualifying? Nowhere near 13th place. That's yeah, I think he got 3 invalidated sectors on his last lap as well, so he really needs a big improvement. It's hard to not improve on 3 invalid sectors. Craig Curtis went quick on his sector 1 but couldn't convert it to anything better. Eric Axelson's up in sector 2. That'll maybe bridge the gap a little bit to Nicky Taylor, who put that lap time in, Andy, and has not really done anything else. Eric Axelson does cross the line, and I tell you, he has closed the gap, hasn't it? It's only 0.2 of a second now.
Yeah, much more like it from Eric Axelson. So odd then that Eric can unlock the potential of the Astra around this place, and yet Josh Martin is languishing down in 13th as we've seen. That, I believe, is Jordan Taylor we are watching now as he looks, almost look like he was looking over his shoulder then to see where his teammate was. It doesn't quite work that way in sim racing, Jordan, as I'm sure he knows. He's a very, very well-established young sim racer already, is Jordan, and has really sort of arrived with a bang here at the VRRC. And Jordan Taylor, how is he getting on so far? He's not towards the pointy end, is he? He's down in 12th, in fact, just 1 place ahead of Josh Martin right now. So a couple of big names struggling, although Jordan has fallen foul, hasn't he, Jack? And I'm throwing to you for this because I don't fully understand it yet myself, but he has fallen foul slightly of a slight tweak, or an addition, should I say, to the ballast system. So, Jack, you've got 3.25 minutes left of the session. Can you successfully explain to our viewers how this works before the checkered flag?
Damn, I was hoping you'd do this about 30 seconds ago so I can fall over myself and then all of a sudden erupt with a new pole position time and get me out of it. Apparently there is a slightly differing safety rating feature that's now in place at VRRC, where essentially if you get a certain amount of penalty points and a certain amount of disciplinaries and everything like that, then you get potentially 5 extra kilograms added on, and through very complicated systems that only Rich Hayden and Lewis Edwards seem to understand, it sort of can accumulate to about an extra 15 kilograms as well. And Jordan Taylor, I believe, is one of those drivers with, correct me if I'm wrong in my ear, Lewis, I believe he's got an extra 10 kilograms. Yep, Jordan Taylor with an extra 10 kilograms on board, as well as the championship ballast and his driver ranking. And just trying to have a look at what his driver ranking is. The picture they've sent through, although very detailed, is quite small and I can't quite make it out. But effectively, yeah, Jordan Taylor's got a few extra kilos on board, and I believe his teammate Carl Felvis does as well.
Yes. Indeed, 10 we're hearing as well there. So yeah, I mean it's quite a complicated system, but the simplest way of explaining it, I think, and this is how it was explained to us, is that if you hit things you gain weight, if you don't hit things you lose weight, and it's all designed to promote cleaner driving and cleaner racing out on track. Not that we really suffer with driving standards here at the VRRC, in fairness, but inevitably, particularly in those reversed grid races, you get a few cars tripping over each other, and if certain drivers are guilty of doing that more than others, then this is hopefully a way of deterring them from doing that. Jordan Taylor getting it all wrong through Brundle and Nelson. Not only does that ruin his lap, but it ruins his teammate's lap as well, who was trying to get a nice little slipstream from him. So there were things not all smooth sailing for HFT at the moment as Joel Lask jumps into 6th position. There's one driver that we haven't mentioned just yet, excuse me. And that is our championship leader, Jack Smith. He's not having a terrible session, Jack Oliphant. He's not as rapid as we've come to expect, especially at a track that, again, we often see the BMW run well at in real life.
Yeah, again, he's got a load of weight on board. He's actually the only driver in this complicated system that we have here, and that is a level 5 performer, and that means that he has the most amount of ballast on board. He has the full, I think it's 25 kilos as a level 5 driver. If you're level 4, it's 20. If it's level 3, 15, I believe. Lewis, am I right? Oh, it doesn't matter. Lewis isn't even listening to me, and why should he? Most people probably aren't. But yeah, I think Jack Smith basically has a lot of weight on board, and he's doing a pretty good job at even in the top 5. At Alton Park, I believe he got a podium out of it, which again is quite impressive. So he clearly has learned that BMW down to a T, and although, yeah, it might not be setting the world alight, 7/10 off pole position, he still is crucially ahead of the likes of Kyle Felvis and Joel Lask, and obviously his teammate Oliver Gibson, which are big names that he needs to be taking points out of.
Yeah, interesting comment actually coming in on YouTube from, I think that says Mr. Phoenix Fear, saying that those BMWs must love that extra weight over those rear wheels. Now, I unfortunately can't tell if that's a sarcastic comment or not, but the answer is no, they probably don't. In theory, you would think that more weight over the rear of a rear-wheel drive car would help, but as we can see, it isn't really. A big moment there for Jack Smith coming out of Nelson. We've seen so far this season, really, that the rear tyres on these BMWs really take a beating. They're struggling with overheating those rears. Gibson perhaps a touch more than Smith, in fairness, and adding extra ballast over the rear wouldn't really help, although as Rich Hayden helpfully reminds us, the ballast sits in the middle of the car so that it doesn't have a massive effect in that way. Had an improvement there from Joel Lask into 4th position. Elliot Dalton-Ayres has also jumped onto the front row too, so a couple of little changes at the front, but nobody can quite get near Nicky Taylor at the moment. It's a shame that Nicky's not doing the full season, because we know he's a bit of a front-wheel drive expert, races front-wheel drive tin tops in real life, and we would have expected him to go well throughout the course of the season. Oliver Gibson is going well, though, and pulls in a really good late flyer to jump into the outside of row number 2. So Gibson up to 4th, and that means the championship leader, Jack Smith, is down in 7th. So that handy 16-point lead that he had is suddenly not looking all that secure, is it? Especially with people like Elliot Dalton-Ayres, who is 2nd in the championship, lining up 2nd on the grid at the moment. Getting a report from Josh Martin that he hit a tyre bundle on the inside at Hamilton, so he had damage. That's why he finds himself all the way down in 14th by the flag. It's a slightly jumbled grid then for our first race of the evening, which is coming up very shortly. We're going to take a very short break, then we'll hear from our pole sitter, and then we'll be into our first 20-minute race of the evening. So qualifying complete here at Sneterton then, and an interesting grid it has provided, but a very familiar look to the front of the grid for those who tuned in a week ago, because we'll be seeing the Honda of Nikki Taylor lining up on pole position, and Nikki joins us now in the commentary box. Nikki, great to have you back in the championship again, now on a slightly more consistent basis, and I tell you what, it's like you've never been away, straight to the top of the times again, second week in a row, and this time at your home track.
Yeah, I mean, I know Snet, and I have done a bit more laps than what I have previously on like practice this week. But yeah, I just love the track, and it just gels with me. I don't really know why. It just gels with how I drive and stuff. And I knew a 50 was possible. I was on for 50.7-ish about on the last lap, but then I accidentally hit Paul because I don't know what happened there though, because I braked at my standard point. He seemed to brake later and then still get this car stopped earlier. So I don't know what happened there, but yeah, good quality.
Yeah, excellent quality. Puts you in prime position now to try and control the race from the front, but that might be a bit harder to do here than Alton Park. It's that little bit easier to pass here. You're going to have to defend maybe in the early stages, or are you confident that you've got the pace to pull away?
I don't know. I mean, I would be confident after about the first few corners. I'll have to see how I go, but I am confident once I get my head down, and if I start making a small gap that I can just pull away. However, push to pass is going to obviously be interesting here because I haven't used one in practice, so I don't know how it handles.
Yeah, hybrid is going to be an interesting talking point here. I think lots of places where you could use it. You know, this isn't really like a Brands Hatch or an Alton Park where there's kind of one or two obvious places to use it. I think people might get quite adventurous with using the hybrid to try and make progress. And of course, hard for you to know what the other drivers around you are doing with that.
Yeah, I mean, I know a few slightly optimistic places. Sorry, but I'll have to see how it goes. And at the end of the day, push to pass is just another factor I have to deal with. And if people are going to go past via it, then that's fine. My pace is good enough without it, so I have full faith with just slipstream that I can still catch up.
Loving the confidence. There's a lot of concern, by the way, for you in the YouTube chat that it might be a bit warm in your room because you're dressed for the occasion. I see you look fantastic, but as the weather starts getting a bit toastier, I hope you've got a good fan or some aircon working in there.
Yeah, about that I don't, but only reason why I've done this is because I was thinking on the way back from work I'm going to wear my helmet tonight, and then I realised when I was doing it like in practice, I was like, I can't hear the stream at all. So I've gone for the race suit and the gloves. The helmet's on show, but I can't add that on because I can't hear anything. But yeah, Josh basically re-sparked my idea of wearing the suit. So here I am. I am sweating a bit. So after race 1 and race 2, I think I'm going to have lost about 4 kg in sweat. But we'll see how it goes, and anything to commit a good cause.
Sorry, is Ted underneath the helmet there, Nikki? Because I noticed he's not there all of a sudden.
I tried to. He is here. I did try to put the helmet on him, but the helmet seems to be a bit too heavy. So he kind of capsized with it on. But yeah, he is here in spirit, and he's laying down this week.
Love that.
I won't say I blame him either. Well, Nikki, you don't get the chance to lay down and rest because you've got a race to go and win, so we'll let you go and do that, we hope. And I'm sure we'll be speaking to you again later. Best of luck.
Hopefully. Cool. Cheers.
So Nikki Taylor then on the pole position, and well, with Nikki wearing his race suit, Josh Martin's got the helmet on. Between them, Jack, I think they make a complete racing driver. That's how it works, right?
Yeah, I don't see why not. And, well, Josh Martin, though, I think he needs to swap it back round, doesn't he? Take the helmet off, stick the race suit on, and maybe he'll be a bit closer to Nikki Taylor because he is struggling a little bit. Maybe that's because he can't hear the stream or because he's too busy hitting tyres on the inside of the circuit. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, 15th place is definitely a talking point, isn't it, for a driver who we come to expect to be racing right at the front end, obviously a previous champion here at VRRC. What can we expect from him? He's got Andy Carroll just ahead of him, Andy, and he's got Lee Morgan, Jordan Taylor, who's, again, out of position, arguably, Craig Curtis, a lot of drivers that, you know, you'd probably expect Josh to be a little bit quicker than.
You would, although Josh has been a little up and down, hasn't he, really, this season? More down than up, quite frankly, which is a shame because we love seeing Josh near the front of the field, but do wonder whether maybe that Vauxhall, whilst it's clearly got the pace, maybe just doesn't really suit his driving style, because we can't argue that it's a slow car. Eric Axelsen is getting some good pace out of it. Josh Martin has been quick on occasion, but just seems to struggle to put together a full evening of racing without some sort of calamity befalling him, and that's often the sign that he's not really clicking with his car. So wait and see. Half the season still to go. The one thing we can guarantee from Josh Martin is that whatever he gets up to is going to be exciting. So looking forward to seeing how he can move up the order. Nicky Taylor then and Elliot Dalton Ayres on that front row of the grid. Dalton Ayres second in the championship coming into tonight's pair of races. Jack, what do we expect from Elliot here? The Hyundai on the outside of that second row. Second would be a good result, actually, wouldn't it, with Nicky not really being a factor in the championship?
It would be a very good result, considering Scott Bugner is third in the championship, starting in sixth. So plenty of drivers in between Elliott and sort of main championship rivals. Scott Bugner is sixth and Jack Smith in seventh. So I'm excited to see what Elliott can do. Normally he flies under the radar a little bit. I suppose maybe we're going to have to keep actually looking out for Elliott to see what the storylines are with him, because we can't keep saying it every week that we don't remember actually saying his name that much, and yet here he is in a championship run-in. So Oliver Gibson as well, again, he was left it very late in qualifying, like I think he did at Brands Hatch. Can he convert it? He's had tyre wear problems, the rear wheel and traction areas, and Croft, I think we saw him sliding around quite a lot as well, so I'm excited to see what he can do, but it's always very entertaining to watch him at least.
Indeed. Here we go then. Red light's about to go on. 4 different makes of car in the top 4 positions. It's the Honda and the Hyundai on the front row. Can Nicky Taylor convert pole position to a race win for the second week in a row? Let's find out. Away we go. Pole position on the outside here at Sneterton, and that has not benefited Taylor. It's a great start, as you'd expect from the BMW though. And Gibson up the inside of both of them. 3 wide for the race lead. There is Oliver on the inside. He gets the lead briefly. Taylor commits to the outside line though, and will keep the Honda ahead of the Beamer. Here comes Dalton Ayres looking up the inside now into the Wilson hair, but he's late on the brakes. Gibson perhaps a bit tentative on cold tyres, actually opened the door nicely for the Hyundai driver, but now the track goes left. That will favour the Hyundai, and he will hold on to the position. There was a bit of contact further back, but they're all more or less cleanly through, I reckon, with a fantastic opening sequence of corners there. Taylor, Jack, somehow hanging on.
Yeah, no, Taylor did well. You got to think that he might well actually pull away with this one. I think there was a Scott Bugner move on just behind. No, it's not Scott Bugner, is it? That's Carl Felves and Joel Lask pretty much going side by side. Then Jordan Taylor behind Kyle with Jack Smith hunting him down. Jack Smith hasn't had the best start, has he? Is he down in 9th place? And who's that gone grass cutting? Is it Ethan Hill? What a shame. He got a podium last week, or a couple of weeks ago. I'm not actually sure when it was, but Ethan Hill, unfortunately, not going to get a podium in this particular race.
No, race 2 now very much becomes his target. He's back on the grass again, going ahead of Agostini, so I don't know if he's got a problem or some damage that he has sustained, but out onto the back straight they go. There is Eric Axelsen then, so Axelsen in behind Oliver Gibson, who has slipped down to 3rd despite that really demon start that he made. Axelsen 4th, 5th then Bugner out wide on the grass. In the background is Joel Lask, but manages to keep it together. Jack Smith, though, has dropped down to 10th position, so a terrible start for the other BMW. The championship leader really suffering here, and look, he's got Joel Lask just ahead of him, because after Lask's grassy moment at Brundle and Nelson, the 2 HFT drivers have both gone through.
Yeah, no, they'll be very pleased about that. I think Carl Feltz had a bit of an easier run of it than Jordan Taylor, who decided to commit fully, and I think there was a bit of a spin at the final corner as well. No, maybe not. I thought in the background, well, Chris Blakely has slipped down into 16th place. He wasn't particularly high up before. Sam Zer and Ben Jemison are fighting amongst it as well, but here comes Joel Lask looking up the inside of Jordan Taylor. Now, we've had a fair few little spats, shall we say, between Joel Lask and, well, LB Motorsport generally, and the HFT boys, haven't we, this season? And they're going to start reigniting here tonight as well.
Yeah, it's the VRRC's very own Jason Plato and Matt Neal feud developing between these two, isn't it? Axelsen, meanwhile, at the inside of Oliver Gibson and takes 3rd place away. So the Beamer's really struggling here in the opening stages. Got off the line well, did Gibson, but just not able to hold on to the pace of the front runners. So Axelsen up into 3rd then. And Eric Axelsen sitting 8th in the championship. Not too late for him to rally back in the points, but he needs some really, really good results to start coming in pretty quickly. And getting back into 3rd place is a good way to start that. BMW, though, could come back into its own in the second half of the race, as long as they look after those rear tyres. That really has been their issue so far. Axelsen on the hybrid there down the Bentley straight, but interestingly, Gibson not. And so that opens the door for Scott Bugner to breeze past him.
I almost forgot that the hybrid's a thing, but look at the rear-wheel drive diving into Nelson there and actually holding on to the position just about as they go through bomb hole. You would favour the inside line of the BMW, and there he goes. A little cutback maybe on for Scott Bugner. Going through Coram? No, not to be. It's probably sensible to line it up for going into Ritchie's, the first corner, isn't it, in about a couple of 100 metres time. But the HFT of Kyle Felvis is giving them the flash of the lights to Scott Bugner as Oliver Gibson lives to fight another day as he's on the hybrid.
Eric Axelsson flying along now. He's really closing in on Elliot Dalton Ayres for second place as everybody else fights for fourth on back, really. Carl Felvis, as you said, on the tail now of the Hyundai of Scott Bugner ahead. Bugner, remember, third in the championship, Felvis fourth, just 3 points between them. So Felvis could do with finding a way through if he can. Then you've got Jordan Taylor almost playing rear gunner now to keep Joel Lask sixth in the championship at bay. The way Joel started his season, you'd have put money on him being a championship contender. Missed the third week at Croft, but that's fine. That became his dropped score. It would have been fine, that is, had he not had a dreadful Alton Palmer. He didn't break into the top 10 in either race, so Joel Lask really now trying to dig himself out of that hole and just struggling to do so for the time being. Gibson then oddly struggling here, Jack. I really didn't expect this out of the BMWs this week. I know that the ballast is playing a small part in this, but the BMW just isn't doing what we expect the BMW to do. It looks, if anything, weak coming through these tight corners, and that should be where it excels. Yeah, well, I think, to be fair, Oliver Gibson has less weight on board than Jack Smith as well, so he's not even got that much of an excuse as Bugner. Now, I think he's just got past, hasn't he? And I was looking at my stats screen, and we're using the hybrid now, Bugner and Gibson. The slippery BMW in a straight line. You would think going into Brundle and Nelson that he might have an opportunity. Bugner cuts the nose off. No, he doesn't actually. He goes wide. I don't think there was any contact. And in fact, he cuts the corner entirely. There goes Gibson and the HFT driver just behind him. That's Kyle Felvis. And he's trying to take advantage through bomb hole. And he does take advantage of Oliver Gibson's slight, small moment of weakness. Going through Cora and the rear wheel drive is very difficult to get onto the brakes into Murray's. And I think Oliver Gibson's going to have to swallow his medicine here and just accept that he's going to lose out one, maybe two positions as Jordan Taylor. And in fact, he's gone spinning round. Oliver Gibson finds himself facing the wrong way out of the final corner. And that's going to really hurt his race. Oh dear. Well, now this also presents a bit of an issue for Scott Bugner because I think he'll probably be asked to give that position back to Oliver Gibson because he did cut the course to stay ahead of the BMW, but he can't very well do that now. So, yeah, that'll be an interesting one to sort out after. Meanwhile, Joel Lask and Jack Smith now battling away. That's Smith gaining a position, and in fact, Jack's gained a few positions in recent memory because we've had the issue for Gibson as well, and Jack Smith now getting past the Hyundai of Joel Lask's as well. So Lask losing a spot there to the BMW, which now starts to creep its way back towards the front, although Lask is back up the inside now into Agostino. The Hyundai good on the brakes, we know, but Jack Smith pretty handy in that department as well. Tries to hang tough on the outside, then tries to use that BMW traction off the corner. Can he get into Hamilton still ahead? No, there's still an overlap. There's a little bit of leading goes on. Jack Smith's on the grass, and he is going to go around as well. The championship leader pointing the wrong way. After a little bit of paint trading there with Joel Lask, and all of a sudden the race has completely unravelled for the BMWs. Yeah, I was getting a little bit nervous through Agostini, to be honest. He was very late on the brakes, Jack Smith, trying to go around the outside, and I could just see the front right of Joel Lask about 3 inches away from the rear left of the BMW, and I was just thinking, hoping and praying that no contact came of it. It didn't until another 2 corners time, but then when it does, unfortunately, the BMW is nearly always going to come out worse with the just the physics of the rear wheel drive. And if you're on the grass as well, that's never going to help either, is it? So unfortunately, we have lost both the BMWs. There is a race 2, of course, where they'll be expecting, if they are starting towards the front end, given the reverse grid, they will be expecting themselves to take victory. But we'll have to wait and see. There's a long time to go in this evening, and there's still 12 minutes to go in this one, actually. We haven't even hit halfway, although Nicky Taylor doesn't look like he's showing any signs of slowing up. What's the gap? 3.5 seconds to Elliot Dalton Ayres. And then Elliot's got a bit of a headache from behind as well, though, with Eric Axelsson closing in ever so slightly. He's less than half a second now. The drive from third to second, and then because of those bit of contact and the spinnings, that midfield battle, or that sort of top 5 battle, seems to have calmed down just a touch for the time being. Does a little bit for now, but we'll see. These races have a habit of coming back together again. Now, that's another one of the BMWs off. Which one is that? At
Gibson, I think.
Rich's, that's Oliver Gibson, yeah. So Gibson's had a second rotation. And, right, I'm no engineering expert here, Jack, but I think maybe the rear tyres on that BMW are a little warmer than they should be, because the back of the car was, again, trying to overtake the front coming out of the corner. He's already had one spin, and that really, on Assetto Corsa, has always been my experience. It's not so much tyre wear that you have to watch out for, it's overheating the tyres, and if you slide those tyres once too often, you lose all grip from them. So Gibson now almost just needs to take a step back, calm down, calm the tyres down, and then he might be able to keep control.
Yeah, it's a bit of a trait, to be honest, on this sim, and you do have to sort of leave it for an entire lap going about 70% speed or something. So it's not just when you're losing time from a spin, it's not just when you're actually spinning before you recover or anything like that. It's actually then half a lap later when you can get the car finally back under control without spinning again. And well, Gibson is feeling that right now, isn't he? Where is he actually? He's 17th, I believe. Is that? Yeah, 17th actually. Here is Josh Martin. Now, I was about to say when we were talking about him earlier on, yeah, maybe the pressure's off because Dave isn't in the YouTube chat anymore, but he has reappeared, and he's here to remind everyone that Josh is washed, apparently. And, well, unfortunately, with Josh, is he still outside the top 10? No, he's 10th now. He's gained about 5 places, actually, so Dave may well be eating his words before too long.
Well, possibly, although this is still not quite the Josh Martin experience that we've come to expect. He is doing his best to close in on the group of cars ahead, who are battling as well. So this is a potential here for him to gain some more places. That's Jordan Taylor, Joel Lask, Craig Curtis and Andy Dorman, and it's Taylor at the front of that group who is proving to be a little bit of a cork in the bottle, which is not what we've come to expect from Jordan, but again, that extra ballast that he's carrying this weekend, or this week I should say, perhaps starting to come into play. Joel Lask really needs some more points out of this week as well, so could do with getting into that 6th place as soon as he can. With the leaders, as Jack quite rightly said, starting now to separate themselves, this does become really the most entertaining battle on the track. Having said that, though, Eric Axelsen has caught Elliot Dalton-Ayres to 2nd place, Jack. Could be getting pretty tasty in the near future as well.
Yeah, I think it's about the same, isn't it, as what we're viewing right now, Joel Lask. And in fact, here is that battle for 2nd. Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Eric Axelsen both on the hybrids. I'm not sure how many hybrids are left, but that's very deep from Dalton-Ayres. But then Axelsen actually misses the 2nd apex. So he didn't really take advantage of that. And you can see, I think he's a little bit annoyed at himself, to be honest, because there was an opportunity there. He just was trying something slightly different, and it didn't come off for him. And unfortunately, it was at the same time where Dalton-Ayres made a mistake. Going into Murray's always a very difficult braking zone. I'm not entirely sure what it's like in a front-wheel drive car. I've never driven Snetterton in a front-wheel drive. I know in a rear-wheel drive, it's very, very difficult to get the car stopped. You have to be very smooth with the braking, and engine braking can be quite an important thing as well, for just being as smooth as possible. But it's, yeah, a very difficult corner, and some people are brave enough to try and make an overtake around there. It's sketchy, to say the least. You're always better off trying to get a good exit and getting into the first corner, or even into the second here, the hairpin. And you can see that Eric Axelsen trying to use as much of the track as possible. Slightly different lines to Elliot Dalton-Ayres, but I think there's going to be a move on here at some point, Andy, if Eric can actually keep the lap together and take advantage of some of these mistakes.
Yeah, looks quicker at this stage of the race, doesn't he? And still has 8 minutes to go to try and find a way through. I don't think they're going to catch Nicky Taylor, though. He said that he was confident he had the pace to pull away at the front of the field, and you have to say he was speaking the absolute truth, wasn't he there? 5 seconds to the good already. Craig Curtis, meanwhile, has just moved ahead of Andy Dorman. That was a change for 8th position, but Josh Martin seemingly not quite close enough to take advantage, so not yet climbing himself up any further inside the top 10. Eric Axelsen then with almost a grimace on his face as he heads out onto the Bentley straight. All of the top 3 cars using the hybrid at the same time, which means there's not really a huge amount of benefit. That Bentley straight is the obvious place to use it. I'm intrigued, though, to know which parts of the track Nicky Taylor was thinking of that maybe were also options for using the hybrid. The pit straight certainly is one of them, but all of the other straights, Jack, to me are a little bit too short, unless you're in a side-by-side battle, in which case the hybrid could give you that small advantage.
Yeah, no, I was thinking the same as well. You could going into Agostini might be an interesting one, but then you're going to change your braking points and you have to practice that sort of move as Eric Axelsson misses the apex completely and grimaces all the way through it, through Murray's. And, well, this is no longer the closest battle we've got on circuit because Elliot Daltonez is pulling away with it and, in fact, saves a hybrid, doesn't he, as Eric had to use his just to catch back up to the Hyundai, and we shoot backwards to, well, is this a recovering Jack Smith on Paul Laramie? No, it's not, is it? It's Oliver Gibson against Ethan Hill. Ethan Hill trying to hold on to 15th place is not a sentence that either of these drivers will be enjoying.
No, indeed so. There must be a way to distinguish those two BMWs from each other. If there is, neither of us have yet spotted it, apart from the name on the window, obviously, but that's not always the easiest to see. What we can see is Oliver Gibson getting a much better run through Rich's corner, though, than Ethan Hill. He's up the inside and looks as though he is going to claim an extra position as a result. Remember, you score points in this championship wherever you finish, pretty much, so every position is worth fighting for here for Gibson. Needs to try and salvage something from this race. The same true of his teammate Jack Smith, who's up a few places further ahead for the time being. Jack Smith in 13th place right now, so he would be scoring 8 championship points. Ethan Hill, though, coming back up the inside again of Gibson into Agostini and relieves him of that place once again. Drifts a bit wide, but the Honda, again, strangely getting off the corner that little bit more quickly than the Beamer. So the Civic Type R staying ahead, but then runs on the grass, and Gibson now goes sweeping round the outside, and in the end it's made a little bit easier for him.
Yeah, no, I think he'll have enjoyed that one, Oliver Gibson. Ethan Hill just seems to not be able to hold on to that Honda around here. And, well, we can't be blaming hot tyres or anything like that. He's very angry, though, throwing his hands around, and I can understand why, to be honest, because it'd be very, very frustrating for him, and having to lose not only at the beginning of this race, but then small fights that he did have, he seems to have thrown away. But a bit of a shame for Ethan. There is always a reverse grid, like we mentioned a couple of times. Elaine Gibson saying that she can't watch. She's apparently hunkered by the wine fridge, which, to be honest, my absolutely boiling hot office, I wouldn't mind a nice cold glass of wine as well. It might be a little bit more refreshing. Hopefully it gets a bit easier for you, Elaine, this for the second race at least. Right, Eric Axelsson has caught back up to Elliot Daltonez, so within 3/10, but drifting the rear end again. Eric is not driving how we come to expect, is he, Andy?
No, it wasn't exactly silky smooth, that was it? Although good car control to keep the back of the car in check, front wheel drive. You do have to kind of drive the car that way a little bit, especially here at Snetterton. It's a track where it's very easy to get a bit of understeer creeping in towards the second half of the race in a front wheel drive car. So you naturally will set it up to be a little bit looser, wind that brake bias back a little bit, stiffen up the rear shocks if you can. Although, of course, we run a semi-fixed setup here at the VRRC, so they're limited on what they can do to the car. But Eric Axelsson, we know, has good car control. For all this talk of him being the silky smooth Swedish assassin, try saying that 3 times quickly, he does have really quick hands when it comes to those sideways moments. Dropping away, though, slightly from the Hyundai for the time being, so we'll check back in again with the Joel Lask and Jordan Taylor battle, which really has dropped off the tail now. Bugner and Felvis ahead, their teammates both escaping from these two, and for the time being, Lask unable to find a way through, and the fact he's out of hybrids, Jack, is not going to increase his chances.
Yeah, to be honest, I was amazed that he was as close as he is, considering he doesn't have any hybrids left. But I think he may have just used his last one on the Bentley straight just then. There is only 3.5 minutes to go, but the fact that he is the top runner without any, he's the only driver within the top 7, I think, isn't he, without any hybrids left, is going to hurt him slightly. The only sort of crumb of comfort maybe he can take is the fact that Craig Curtis doesn't have any either. Here is Eric Axelsson looking towards the outside of the first corner. There's a cutback if he can make the second apex. No, Elliot Daltonez manages to make that. Good driving from him, good defensive drive, but he doesn't look to be actually driving that defensively at all, does he, Elliot? He's going for the normal racing lines, and he's not too worried about the Swede just behind him.
Yeah, Daltonez, you feel points racing a little bit here, but he's certainly not going to relinquish second place if he can help it. Remember, 16 points of the championship lead. Well, if he can finish in second position in this race, he will take 22 points, so that will give him the championship lead. Well, almost. Of course, Jack Smith has actually recovered reasonably well, but it certainly tightens things up in the championship race, as Jack Smith perhaps now looks at an evening that could become his dropped score come the end of the season. Lap and a half to go then here at Sneterton. Elliot Dalton there's doing his best to keep Eric Axelsen behind, defending well, not over-defending for the time being. And looking at the hybrid situation, it looks to me as though Dalton Ayres has one extra hybrid use over Eric Axelsen, and that could be the thing that makes the difference.
It could be, especially going down here. I think Eric's quite happy with maybe keeping his hybrids right up until the very end, because Elliot used it there down the Bentley straight. Maybe Eric feels he can sort of catch up to the back of him, maybe save one or two. In fact, he's only got 2 left, hasn't he? And use them on the final lap to try and really push Elliot. Obviously, these drivers don't know how many hybrids each other have left. So for the likes of Nicky Taylor, he doesn't know how many anybody's got left because he hasn't seen anybody for such a long time. He's 7.5 seconds up the road. We almost forget that he's in the race. But maybe Eric has been sort of counting the amount that Elliot's used. It would be a very, very hard thing to do, though, wouldn't it? While you're trying to drive around here, do the best you can. It's always very difficult to actually concentrate on everything else, everybody else's race as well. But Eric, if anybody can do it, I'm sure he can. Are we on to the final lap of the race? I think we may well be, actually. 1 minute and 50 seconds is the lap time round here, and we've only just got 1 minute to go.
We have indeed. So Eric Axelsen running out of time now, running out of opportunities, but he has at least balanced that hybrid situation out now. They'll both inevitably use that hybrid down the back straight, you would imagine, so it may end up just sort of cancelling each other out, but we'll wait and see as Eric Axelsen tries his best to get into second position if he can. Axelsen hasn't had a podium yet this season, would you believe? Hasn't won a race, by the way, since I think it was week 6 of the GTV3 Championship when he won at Watkins Glen from pole position. So it's been a long time coming, a race victory for Axelsen. That's not likely to happen in this race, but a podium is in the offing. Can he make that second place by the flag? At the moment, not looking likely, but this, Jack, the key moment heading down the back straight.
Yeah, so I'm guessing both of them will activate it. Elliot has activated it a little bit earlier. Eric doesn't seem to want to activate it at all. Or has he got any left, actually? It's a little bit pixelated, but I don't think he's got any left, has he? So this looks like it's going to be Elliot's second place, at least. Kyle Felvis versus Scott Bugner. Now, Felvis does have a hybrid left, but he's nowhere near Scott Bugner, actually. I'm not sure what's happened to him, because that gap was a lot closer earlier on. To be fair to Axelsen, didn't get dropped, did he? But here is the race victor, and I don't think anybody's going to be contending against this. Nicky Taylor's been class act, hasn't he? Pole position at Alton Park, race 1 victory, and pole position here at Snetterton, and another race 1 victory. Nicky Taylor, take a bow, my sir. It's been a very, very good race from you indeed. Elliot Dalton Ayres using the hybrid, taking home that second place. The podium finished off by Eric Axelsen. Scott Bugner comes in at 4th position, and Kyle Felvis rounds out the top 5.
Yep, so in the end, fairly calm opening race of the evening here at Snetterton, but race 2, as we know, features that full reversed grid, so anything can happen, and it almost certainly will. Oliver Gibson there trying to get the better, no, that was Jack Smith, sorry, trying to get the better of Paul Laramie at the line, couldn't do it, so Jack Smith, I think, will complete his race in 13th position. So didn't really make much of a recovery after we last checked in on him. Oliver Gibson up to 15th by the flag, so a handful of championship points going their way, but not as many as Nicky Taylor will receive. The full 25 points for winning that race and winning it by 8 seconds in the end. A truly dominant performance from Nicky, who, along with Elliot Dalton Ayres and Eric Axelsen, will be hearing from on the other side of this break. Welcome back, everyone, to the VRRC Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship. The opening race of the second half of the season here at Sneterton has just been completed with a lights-to-flag victory for Nicky Taylor, who joins us for the second time this evening in the commentary box. This time, though, Nicky, as the race winner, your second victory of the season, and really as close to a textbook race as you can get in touring car racing. That you made... Well, a decent start, actually. I'd already forgotten that slightly exciting first corner. Were you worried at all there in the first moments of the race?
Not really. I knew I got a crap start. So I set my revs perfectly and then just dumped the throttle and completely forgot. So I just went and literally kept wheel spinning. But then Jack and Elliot, sorry, literally just decided to brake quite early for T1, and I think I just lifted and just went around the outside of both of them.
You made that sound a lot easier than I'm sure it was. Take some bravery to go around the outside through turn one on cold tyres, that's for sure. From that point on, though, you were then kind of able to control the race, as you said you were confident of doing, running pretty quickly as well. We think that you took the fastest lap out of that one. So a very good start to the night, but now you've got to try and do that from the back of the grid. How chaotic are you expecting this race to be?
Fairly chaotic, but I don't think it will be as bad as Alton, because I think drivers have had their talking tos now by Rich, and it's all been sorted out, so everything should hopefully go a lot nicer and a lot cleaner. My race 2 was shocking last week from jump starting, so if I don't jump start this week, I'm doing better than last week already, so I've got a low bar, so yeah, let's just try and get through.
Excellent. Well, best of luck with that, Nicky. Congrats on that race victory. Let's see how you get on in race 2.
Oh, cheers.
Nicky Taylor then victorious in that second race. More good points in the bag, though, for the man second in the championship going into tonight. And Elliot Daltonaire now catching us up with Jack Oliphant.
Yes, Elliot, congratulations on what was a very, very hard-fought second place in the end. You had Eric Axelson breathing down your neck for the entirety of that sort of race. How was that for you?
Well, it was quite pressurizing, I'd say. I mean, Eric's very quick. I tried to save some hybrid at the start and then use it later in the race, which played well for me because I think Eric started to save a little bit till the end, but just saved mine and then managed to keep him behind and get second place.
I was curious, do you count the amount of times you think your opposition has used the hybrid as well? Because obviously there's no way of you knowing how many times or how many hybrids Elliot has left. So do you sort of through the race maybe have a bit of a guesstimate and try and figure that out?
No, not really. I can just kind of see that he's either, if I'm on the hybrid and he's like staying the same size apart, then I know that he's on it, or if I'm not and he's gaining, then I know he's on it. But no, I don't really count. I just kind of keep pressing it and then keep going.
Hope for the best. Hope for the best. That's that. I mean, there are worse ways to do it, Elliot, because you've clearly shown that it does work. You are with a really good championship shout, aren't you, at the moment? I think you're second place. Obviously, it's not coming up on our screens just yet because it doesn't like working it out during race 1. But are you hopeful this season you can maybe try and claw back Jack Smith?
Yeah, definitely. I've been on a run of good points and hope to continue that and push for that championship and hopefully by the end win it.
You never know, Elliot. Hopefully we'll be having a chat to you after race 2.
Cheers.
Excellent stuff. Excuse me, from Elliot Daltonaire there, who gets a second place finish. It's third place for a man that we haven't really spoken to a lot. Certainly I haven't spoken to for a little while, it seems. And that's because it's his first podium of the season. Eric Axelson, welcome back to the commentary box. Great to have you here. At last, a race that seemed to go to plan there.
Thank you, Andy. Yeah, it's great to be back in the chat. I felt quick in practice and quali, and I had a pretty good start. Jack jumped off the line, of course, but besides that, I was able to keep up with the front, and Elliot was so quick. That was all I had. I tried my best. He's just getting quicker and quicker every race. So yeah, well done.
Yeah, it's been an interesting season really for you and for Josh. The Vauxhall, not the most popular car. You're the only two drivers running it. Is it the car, do you think, that's been holding you back? We know the cars are all very equal, but inevitably some drivers will enjoy more, some cars more than others. Is there something about the Vauxhall that maybe you're just starting to wrap your head around?
Well, to be honest, I can't really blame the car. I picked it because I liked it, and I think I just been like unfortunate this old championship, and because I feel I had a pace in every practice, but just haven't been able to like carry it over to quality on the race. So yeah, I can't really blame the car.
Excellent, and I respect you for that, Eric. We'll let you go and prepare for the second race. It's going to be exciting, I'm sure, but great to have you back on the podium.
Thank you, Andy.
So there we go. Eric Axelsson then completing the podium and very much proving that he didn't want to sort of blame his tools there, did he? He still stands by the decision to pick the Vauxhall and clearly is starting to get a little bit quicker with it in every single week. Now then, we invert the race result from that first race to form the grid for race 2. You VRRC regulars out there know this already, and what you'll also know is that it's guaranteed to produce some action. However, this time we've got the slightly different dynamic of having those two BMWs very near the front of the field, well, certainly nearer to the front of the race 2 grid than they normally are. Oliver Gibson starting from 5th and Jack Smith directly behind him on the grid in 7th place. They perhaps start as the early race favourites, and for Jack Smith, he could really do with some points to try and make up for the disappointing race 1 in which he has come very close to losing the championship lead. They've both got to survive these first couple of corners. From there, perhaps they can run away with it as the second race of the evening at Sneterton gets underway now with Chris Blakey and Sam Zero, the two Ford Focus on the front row of the grid. Here come the BMWs. Decent start made by Oliver Gibson, who tries to fit it up the middle, 3 wide into Rich's corner. That's bold stuff from Oliver. Is it going to work? Well, maybe, but gets boxed in. There's contact in front of him. One BMW is off. Jack Smith gets through, and Gibson is pointing the wrong way. So too one of the HFT Hondas involved, and Oliver Gibson in big trouble through no fault of his own there.
Yeah, and a safety car is being deployed and just ended up getting all crossed up ahead of them, didn't they? It was a bit of a shame. I mean, I wouldn't say inevitable. I would have expected around Snetterton we get most of the cars through unscathed, but unfortunately it didn't happen. And Oliver Gibson, well, I think Elaine is going to need another glass of wine, isn't she? Through the bottle by the end of tonight, I fear. But Jack Smith did get the start he was desiring. I think he was on the outside, wasn't he? So he managed to get away with it a little bit as all the cars seemed to catapult towards the inside of the circuit. Chris Blakely holds on to the lead. Sorry, Blakey, not Blakely. Ethan Hill in that 5th place. He's in 3rd at the moment, isn't he? That's the driver we're currently looking at. I think he went a little bit sideways as well. To be honest, there was quite a lot to dissect there, Andy. I couldn't quite see what on earth happened. But in terms of good runners from the race before, Nicky Taylor up to 14th position. No, it's not 14th position. That's... Where is Nicky Taylor? 18th, my apologies. Eric Axelsson, 17th. Elliot Dalton up to 16th. Carl Felvis 15th. Scott Bugnet in 14th as well. So those are the drivers you'd probably be looking at to move forward. But Joel Lask is the biggest mover and shaker. He's up to 10th.
Yeah, Joel Lask always seems to go well in these reverse grid races, doesn't he? But yeah, contact there between Ethan Hill and somebody else, 3 Riches, and really a great example there of how you need to ride your luck sometimes in racing. Jack Smith went left, Oliver Gibson went right, and it turned out that Smith went the right way. I'm not entirely sure how he got through there. I'd love to see that again because he came very close to being collected, but really good reactions. And now Chris Blakey has a real job on his hands. I'm always intrigued in these situations to see how a driver like Chris, who's not necessarily used to racing at the front of the field, races against someone like Jack Smith. Does he defend as if his life depends on it, or does he accept that Jack is the quicker and lets him go? Well, Jack Smith is on the hybrid now. Chris Blakey joins him on the hybrid button with no overtaking before the timing line. Remember, now they're allowed to go side by side, which they do, and Blakey on that inside line. Can he hang on the safety car restart? Yes, he can, and Ethan Hill comes through on the inside line with him, right up on the curb. They're all going to get boxed in here into the hairpin. They could go 3 wide. Blakey defending that inside, runs out wide. Jack Smith tries to get the contact, and around he goes. No, somehow saves it with a bit of assistance from Ethan Hill. Smith is flashing the headlights in fury, but actually can be quite grateful to still be in a podium place.
was going to say there was some assistance for getting him around the right way, but there was some assistance in facing him the wrong way in the first place, wasn't it? And I wouldn't be surprised if Ethan Hill gets told to switch those positions around. I'm sure Ethan will probably be hoping and praying that Kenny Press doesn't get ahead of Jack Smith, but during all of that meleeing, there is a fight for the top 10 positions, and I think Josh Martin is well and truly involved. This is, who was that? Andy Carroll, I think, wasn't it, actually? We were just having a quick focus on, as Morgan and Dorman, yeah, they keep swapping over positions as well. It's quite hard to keep up with at the moment.
It is indeed. Lee Morgan going well, though, inside the top 10, just ahead of the red and purple Focus, then the red and purple Honda behind is Craig Curtis, then Kyle Felvers, and Kyle Felvers looking to try and move forward. So too there is Joel Lask just ahead of them, as he is up alongside Paul Laramie. That's for a position in the top 5. Laramie trying to hang on. Lask braves it out around the outside, and that's Josh Martin off the road. Josh Martin completely sideways. There is absolute calamity at Nelson Corner. Craig Curtis, I think that was off the road too. It's all kicking off in the second race of the evening, and well, that was a very, very messy start to the race. Now, someone else who has come a cropper in all of this, it seems, Jack, is our race one winner, Nicky Taylor, out of the race.
Yes, and apparently it's due to a busted engine. I've absolutely no idea how he's managed to do that, whether he's shifted down gears a little bit too quickly, but equally, he's not in it anymore. But a driver who is definitely in the race is Jack Smith, and he's in a race-winning position currently, because he's just got ahead of Chris Blakey. Ethan Hill still resides in 3rd place. Joel Lask, though, Andy Carroll, they are 5th and 6th. And I think, here we go, here's Eric Axelsson up against, that is Jordan Taylor, isn't it? Yes, it is. That's the fight for, my screen has gone horrendously pixelated, 13th, I think that is.
It is, yes. 13th place now then for Eric Axelsson, and now Jordan Taylor under pressure from a recovering Craig Curtis. There goes Joel Lask up the inside. That's on Kenny Press. So that's 4th place now for Joel Lask. This is a lot more like it for Joel, and Ethan Hill's had a moment too, and Lask has gone past him. So Joel Lask driving past them as if they're standing still for the time being. He's into the podium places, and he might now have something to say about Jack Smith, because he and Jack have been on a relatively similar pace, I'd say, so far tonight. Joel has got to catch and pass Chris Blakey first, but, well, with nearly 3/4 of the race still to go, I wonder whether the Hyundai driver could get up there and challenge. He's on the hybrid button now as they head down the Bentley Straight and already eating into the advantage of the 2 cars ahead of him.
Yeah, and as we focus a little bit further back, this is Elliot Dalton-Ayres, isn't it? And then he's got Kyle Felvers just behind Dalton-Ayres with Bugner ahead as well. And there's still, I'd probably say, about 4, 5, maybe 6 drivers ahead of this little gaggle of cars that they all consider themselves to be faster than. So Kyle Felvers, how mature is he feeling today? Is he going to let Dalton-Ayres carve his way through? Is he going to send a lunge on him through the first corner? We'll have to wait and see. I suppose it maybe is dictated by, what's going on there? Actually, a couple of drivers off, and Elliot Dalton-Ayres, is he one of them? No, Kenny Press, I think, isn't it, in the Hyundai? Has gone off, and into the pits has gone Kenny Press.
Yes. I don't think he would. I don't know why he's gone into the pits, actually, because I don't think there was any damage, unless he's picked up a penalty of some sort. Through Riches we go, side by side there. That is Scott Bugner, a lot further down than he should be, really. Likewise, Elliot Dalton-Ayres, the 2 Hyundai side by side. The Phoenix Sim Racing driver on the outside. Bugner gives him the hip and shoulder, and right behind them, Kyle Felvers as well. Bugner goes through. Felvers up alongside the Hyundai of Dalton-Ayres and can't quite make the move stick. Eric Axelsson also struggling to make his way through the field. So 4 really quick drivers here, but they're all languishing a lot further down than they'd like, showing again that some of those midfield drivers are proving harder to pass at this stage of the season than they were a few weeks ago. A big lunge up the inside from Lee Morgan, and this has got disaster written all over it, Jack.
Yeah, in fact, they've just decided to take it upon themselves to move one of the drivers out of the way, and I think that was Paul Laramie, wasn't he? He's fallen behind that massive gaggle of quick cars, and potentially, if I was one of those sort of gaggle of midfield cars, I might be thinking, okay, this is going to get a bit scrappy. Maybe I'll just leave them to it for the time being. But then that's not what we want to see as a neutral fan, is it? We want to see other drivers taking part, making sure they're hard to pass against the quickest. And it really just goes to show sometimes how the best drivers operate. You need to be able to get through these slower cars to be considered a really very good driver. And even though maybe that's slightly unpredictable and everything like that, you just need to learn how to get on with it. And that's part of what being a racing driver is, especially reverse grid racing. So I think we're going to see a few ambitious moves, a few people getting maybe a little bit frustrated, but hopefully some cleaner racing than maybe we've seen in the first 8 minutes.
Well, and those drivers who don't often feature at the front of the field, this is their one chance every evening to try and get some TV time, to try and get their moment in the spotlight. Also, they'll never learn if they don't try and actually race against the front runners. So this is a great chance for them to really practice their racecraft. You know, it's one thing to try and do that with your mates or your teammates in a practice session, but to do it actually in a race situation like this is very, very different. And I'm sure that some of the drivers carving their way through, or attempting to now, will get easily frustrated, but there was probably a time when they were that driver who wasn't really featuring at the front of the field all that often, and they would do anything they could to try and stay near the pointy end. Good move made there by Elliot Dalton-Ayres to get ahead of Lee Morgan now, who had made a mistake at the Wilson hairpin. There's also side-by-side action ahead. That's Andy Dorman versus Chris Blakey. Blakey on the inside line there was second last time we saw him. He's dropped down into 5th place, and that might now become 6th.
Yeah, no, it's you're absolutely sure that on the points before, but I think Chris Blakey is going to be in 6th place. Who is Dorman, isn't it, actually, in the number 40? My apologies for struggling to pick up each driver. It's all my days. Lee Morgan going very deep, and I said maybe, Chris Blakey going very deep, and I said maybe they'll just jump out the way. I didn't quite mean in that much of a dramatic fashion, and even further still, he goes off the road, doesn't he? Well, Chris Blakey is definitely out the firing line. Having said that, Paul Laramie almost crashes into him going onto the Bentley straight.
Yeah, because he had Josh Martin up the inside of him, and they both came across the recovering Blakey very quickly. That might also benefit Oliver Gibson to give him an extra position. Axelson, big sideways moment through Brundle. I thought for a moment he was going to clatter into the side of Carl Felbers. That would have really improved the HFT driver's mood after what's been a very trying evening for the purple and black Hondas. Or pink and black, depending on how colourblind you may or may not be. Through Coram Corner goes the Vauxhall, and this great train of touring cars just refuses to separate. We're losing a couple of them as we go along, but then they to gain new friends with every lap that goes by, with Felbers and Axelson very much part of the fight now. That, meanwhile, I think was Jordan Taylor going grass tracking.
It was indeed, yeah. It's a bit of a shame, really. Murray's is one of the most frustrating corners out there, and I'll explain why in a second as we see Oliver Gibson going toe-to-toe, or door-to-door, I should say, actually, with, that is Blakey, isn't it? Recovering Chris Blakey. Gibson trying to figure out which way to go, and he tries to go for that cutback potentially. Yeah, gets a nice narrow exit. A little bit of contact there with Blakey, but he was a bit keen on the power, I think, the BMW. And a nice little battle here. But you're absolutely right. The drivers who don't necessarily run at the front based on pace or based on qualifying, this is how they are going to learn. And Chris Blakey will probably be one of those drivers that say, you know what, I learned an awful lot from this race. Even though he fell off the road, he'd probably go into the next scenario knowing a little bit more, being a little bit calmer, and having this race with Oliver Gibson will mean an awful lot as well. And even if it ends up in a little bit of contact, which obviously we're not hoping for, he is certainly going to be pleased that he's been shown here, and hopefully he's enjoying the fact that he gets something to clip and something to enjoy. Because actually, since he's isolated himself with Gibson, I was about to say he's driving really well, but then he missed an apex completely.
Yeah, I mean, look, as far as I'm concerned, every car that is on that track is fully entitled to race for every position. Otherwise, what on earth is the point? Oh dear, talking about racing, that's very close racing between the two Hyundais of Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Scott Bugner. That's on the battle over 6th position. Dalton-Ayres has gone through, but Bugner, in true Scott Bugner fashion, fights back again up the inside line through the bomb hole. Dalton-Ayres, though, stays ahead into Cora. That was some full commitment driving, and he managed to make it stick as well. Because of their battling, though, they're actually allowing Andy Dorman and Andy Carroll to pull away. Andy Carroll having one of those Andy Carroll races, isn't he really, Jack, where just for no apparent reason, completely out of the blue, usually in a touring car, Andy Carroll manages to put together a really strong race at the front of the field. We haven't mentioned him all night, and I feel, haven't really mentioned him much this season, but Andy Carroll running 4th and looking strong.
He is indeed, actually, yeah, and we've been so busy looking at that sort of fight for top 10 and those drivers coming through the order, we actually haven't really focused on the drivers that already are up there, have we? And Andy Dorman and Andy Carroll, both of those drivers actually, doing really well in the fight for 4th. Ethan Hill's holding on to that 3rd place really smart as well. There's actually going to be a move for 3rd place, and is that Carroll going through on Dorman? Sorry, Dorman going through on Carroll, actually, my apologies. It is indeed. So 4th place change. You just hope, Andy, that, in fact, it's going to be very confusing. You think it's Jack Smith and Jack Oliphant's hard? Well, try commentating with Andy McEwan on Andy Dorman and Andy Carroll. This is going to be a bit of a holding each other up, though, isn't it, for Elliot Dalton-Ayres potentially to chase him down?
It is, if Dalton Ayres can ever shake off Scott Bugner, but yeah, Andy Dorman up into fourth. Dorman sort of tipped as a bit of a front-wheel drive specialist at the start of the season and is really starting to live up to that reputation now. He's had a good couple of weeks pace-wise, and a fourth place would be a really nice result for him. At the front of the field, by the way, the lead gap coming down. It's down to 1.4 seconds now. Jack Smith to Joel Lask, but Lask is using more hybrid as side-by-side there between Felvis and Bugner managing, has to sit back in behind. He's up the inside this time, though, into the bomb hole, and Carl Felvis may not hold on to that place for much longer. Through the right-handers they go. Through the really long right-hander now at Cora, but off in the back it's Axelsson. Axelsson, what on earth was that all about? The Swedish assassin, I'm afraid, has been taken out in this race. He almost makes the barriers, manages to avoid the contact. Bugner and Felvis still side by side. You don't know where to look.
Yeah, I think, well, we'll get back to Axelsson in a second, because Bugner versus Felvis, LB Motorsport versus HFT, and I said there's been a little bit of friction in the past in this series already. Well, what can they come up with here? What are they cooking up for us as a neutral fan? There's 6 minutes to go. Felvis, to be honest, actually, Andy, to be fair, I'm very, very impressed that they actually managed to get through not only bomb hole side by side, which we both know how difficult that is, but to go through Coram side by side and coming out of Murray's without making a massive amount of contact and spitting one another out onto the grass. So yeah, I think all in all, good bit of driving that we've seen here from both of these drivers.
Yeah, that's exactly how it's done. They left each other just enough space, but that's all the space you have to leave, and they have managed to put on a really good bit of side by side racing there as Scott Bugner heads through Hamilton Corner. That has really now allowed Elliot Dalton Ayres to pull away, and I think for Elliot a second and a sixth place finish would be a decent night, but a second and a fourth would be even better, and I think that is doable right now as he chases down the two Andys ahead of him. Lead gap under 1 second now, by the way, but again, Laska's really been hitting those hybrids hard, and I'm pretty sure still has fewer hybrids left than the race leader Jack Smith. That being said, the Hyundai is continuing to close in. 4 fewer hybrids now for Joel. We're here as Felvis and Bugner again go door to door, and again it's the Hyundai that stays in front.
Yeah, I think Scott Bugner's driving this really well, isn't he? He's just putting his car about half a car width into the defensive position, which is making Felvis having to think at every single corner about what he needs to do next and how to get the run on him, because it means that Bugner can still get a half-decent run out of the corners, but going into them, it's making Felvis think, oh, it's going to have to be a really, really committed late lunge on this one. Maybe doing exactly what he's doing now and using the hybrid is the way forward, and he clearly is, because he's managed to actually get through on that time. Going to Ritchie's, and, well, the HFT driver managed to find himself up into that 7th position, finally. But look at the gap that Elliot Dalton Ayres has got ahead of him, and he's dead. He's chasing down the two Andys when leaving the rest of them in the dust.
Meanwhile, Lee Morgan, looking for his first top 10 of the season, is at the back of this group as well, but just made a mistake at the Wilson Hairpin. He was 9th, but relinquishes that place now in favour of Josh Martin, who cast your minds back about 15 minutes ago, was pointing the wrong way on the grass down at Brundle and Nelson. He's somehow back inside the top 10. I guess that shows how good a driver he is, he will say, how high the attrition rate has been perhaps in this race as well. But either way, Josh Martin climbing up the order and could gain more places. His teammate, sadly, not faring quite as well out of this race, is he? Eric Axelsson is way down the order outside the top 10 in about 14th place, being blinded by the headlights on Chris Blakey's car behind him as well. And Eric Axelsson, well, perhaps could get past Craig Curtis before the flag, but that might be as good as it gets.
Yeah, and I think Blakey's maybe overdriving his car a touch now, overheating those tyres potentially, or maybe getting a bit excited as Bugner and Felvis go side by side once again, and inevitably, Andy, there was going to be contact eventually, wasn't there? And through Brundle and Nelson, that contact has occurred, and well, the camera cut away, so we didn't quite see who actually made the first bump, but going side by side there, it may well end up just being a racing incident. It was a bit of a shame, because that was a really nice couple of laps that we saw them doing battle, but well, it was always going to come to a bit of a head, wasn't it?
Yeah, such a difficult part of the circuit to go side by side. You're braking on a turn and it's bumpy and you're riding the curb, and then you've got to change direction into Nelson as well. Very difficult to do indeed. Side by side into Riches isn't much easier, but that's exactly what the Andes are doing. And Carroll at the inside of Dorman is back into 4th place. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, though, has caught these two and tries to go up the middle of both of them into the Wilson hairpin. That was never going to work, surely not. Well, Carroll leaves his space on the inside there by dirt tracking, and somehow I think this might actually pay off. Dalton-Ayres with the move of the season to go from 6th into 4th. That was some superb driving from all three of them just to get through that corner in one piece, and Elliot Dalton-Ayres proving there that he is well up for the fight this season.
He said he wanted to reel in Jack Smith, and who could argue against him with not only the pace, he can score points without us looking at him. He can score points with the cameras all focused on him as well, and the sort of look into the championship running. Dalton-Ayres is on a flyer right now, and that was really good driving, not to be missing out on the credit to go to Andy Carroll and Andy Dorman as well. They all played their part in that. To be honest, I'm amazed we got third without even more contact, but especially Andy Carroll. I mean, how he held onto that car, hooking it on the inside apex, got it sideways, and then off the corner as well. He's still in 5th place ahead of Dorman, so fair play.
Yeah, I mean, he drove on the grass on the inside, not to try and gain an advantage, but just to try and make sure that he left space for Dalton-Ayres. And that's really, really good racecraft, because it showed that he had the presence of mind, Andy Carroll, to realise that not only was Dalton-Ayres alongside him, but that Dalton-Ayres likely had Andy Dorman to his outside as well. So Carroll had to leave 2 cars' widths, essentially, on the exit, and made sure absolutely that he didn't put either of those other drivers in a difficult position. We are disappointingly on the final lap of this race now, I believe, depending on where the race leaders are. They've just got across the line as well, so they are onto their final lap of racing now. Joel Lasker's really fallen away from Jack Smith over the recent laps. Perhaps a combination of the BMW looking after its front tyres a bit better and the fact that Lasker's run out of hybrids, meaning this is likely to be another race victory for Jack Smith. It will be, well, actually only his 3rd win of the season, but he's been remarkably consistent. He's not yet had a night where he's not finished in the top 5 at least once. And, well, after the way his first race went earlier on this evening, a top 5 was really the bare minimum that he was hoping for out of race 2. A race victory, though, would be even better.
It would be, yeah, and I think Lewis actually said as we were lining up on the grid, didn't he, that if they play the cards right, he would have expected a 1-2 for the BMWs. Now, it obviously didn't go Oliver Gibson's ways. You can't, races aren't won on paper. I'm going to go for producer's curse on that one instead of the commentator's curse. But Jack Smith has shown exactly what he does, and he might not have been the fastest here today in terms of outright pace, but he got into the race lead. He's rescued a relatively poor evening from that race 1, of course. I think Elliot Dalton-Ayres, as long as it stays as it is, will come out as the top point scorer, so he will reel in Jack Smith just a touch. But equally, Smith has done what he can, can't he? And he can't really do much more than that. Final lap of the race, driven superbly. We've hardly mentioned him at all since after the first lap or 2. And yeah, you can't argue against a race victory to the BMW's name.
Yeah, dodged the crash at turn 1, then got tapped into a spin on the restart by Ethan Hill. All in all, pretty lucky, actually, to be out there at the front of the field, but it's not all down to luck. A lot of it down to the fact that Jack Smith is an exceptionally talented driver, and he comes across the line to win the 2nd race of the evening here at Sneterton. Joel Lask finishes in 2nd place, and Ethan Hill will get 3rd place after what was a fairly eventful race for him. Then Elliot Dalton-Ayres should be 4th. There he goes in the Phoenix Sim Racing car, whilst Andy Carroll and Andy Dorman are having a drag race to the line, and it's Dorman who gets it just on the line there. Andy Dorman managing to pip Andy Carroll by what can't have been more than about half a foot or so, with Josh Martin coming through in 7th place. Lee Morgan 8th, Kyle Felvers a disappointing 9th, whilst Oliver Gibson recovers to the top 10 after the troubles that he had in the early stage of that very first corner, really, where Gibson's race rather fell apart, and in fact an evening that promised much for Oliver Gibson, sadly not really delivering. But Jack Smith can be very happy with that race victory. However, I'm not actually convinced that that will become his drop score, because his previous drop was 29 points scored at Brands Hatch. Well, he's just netted 25 for a race win, and I'm sure he scored more than in race 1, so perhaps not quite his worst week of scoring so far this season. Anyway, we'll break the calculators out. We'll have the updated points for you in a little while. In the meantime, let's take a very short break. So the reverse grid race here at Sneterton, as usual, not failing to deliver plenty of action out on track, and it also delivers another race victory for our championship leader Jack Smith, a third of the season, and he keeps that run of top fives alive. He's had at least one top five finish now in each of the 5 weeks of racing so far. But there was a moment there at the start, Jack, in fact a couple of moments in the early laps where I was so sure we'd be talking to you at the end of the race. We always knew starting near the front you should have a good chance of a race victory, but it was anything but straightforward.
Yeah, bit of a sketchy start to both races, to be honest, but yeah, not too bad. We managed to get through it at the end and even let me back through, which was nice. So and then after that, just got after the race win. Really, I just tried to keep Joel behind me. I noticed him catching me. I was counting how many push passes he was using and you're trying to figure out like when to use mine the best and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, race one not ideal, but we always have those weekends. So yeah, we'll just go forward from here.
Yeah, you must have been thinking after the disaster of race one that race two was perhaps going to end the same way through that first quarter. Talk us through your view of turn one, because it looked like some really quick reactions required there to avoid getting involved.
Yeah, well, I know it's coming from Croft. It was the exact same incident where Ethan's sideways in front of me, and last time Ethan was sideways, he managed to straighten himself up straight away. So I did the opposite of what I did at Croft and just went to his right, and it worked. So yeah, got away with that unscathed. But yeah, a little bit sketchy. It's a bit like Cars at the start of that movie. So yeah. But fantastic to see you get through. I mean, that was a really close call. It's one of those moments where the championship could have swung one way or the other, but as it is, good points scored. Don't actually think that will be your lowest score of the season either. I think that will still be Brands Hatch. So you salvage something, and that really is what can win or lose your championships. Yeah, that's all I was thinking about after race one. I just wanted to get a good result in race two and try not to have any incidents, and we did it. So yeah, pretty happy with that.
Thoughts for next week then? Thruxton, perhaps not the best of circuits for the BMW traditionally, and it does have a history of being a little bit chaotic, doesn't it, whenever we've raced at it previously at the VRRC. So what are your thoughts going into next week?
I'll definitely do more practice laps than I did for this, because I started practicing at 6 p.m. tonight, so probably not the best idea. But yeah, definitely do more practicing and just try and find time where the front wheel drives can't. That's the sort of the name of the game now.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure you'll get plenty of those practice laps in. It's going to be important, I think, as we head into the final few weeks of racing. But Jack, congratulations on the third win of the season, and I reckon that might just be enough for you to keep hold of the points lead as well. So all in all, not a bad night.
Yeah, cheers, Andy.
Jack Smith, winner of the second race of the evening then, but he was being chased down in the mid part of the race, as we just heard. He was briefly concerned about the rapidly approaching Joel Lask, who is now about to catch up with Jack Oliphant.
Yes, Joel, that was a good drive from you. Once you got into second place, it was a case of trying to hunt down the championship leader, wasn't it? And for a long time, you seemed to be doing exactly that. Did you think at one point there was an opportunity going to present itself?
Potentially. I mean, I had to push quite hard at the start just to make my way through the pack. There's a lot of people defending sort of from the get-go. Unfortunately, I think I probably burnt my tyres out a little bit too quickly, which sort of made me suffer towards the end. But hey, it's just what it is, I suppose.
I was going to say, you had to come from a fair way back, unlike, say, Jack Smith, who started relatively near the front, didn't he? What was the sort of opening stages like for you? Because there was a bit of commotion on the first corner, wasn't there? Then obviously safety cars, and then after that, it seemed to we just all of a sudden found you at the front. So talk us through your opening couple of laps.
Yeah, that first corner, I saw that carnage sort of backed off a little bit. Managed to make my way through somehow. And obviously the safety car came out. I think, to be honest, with that safety car coming out, it's probably a good thing, because this Hyundai doesn't seem to like the tyres around here. It feels absolutely horrible to drive. It just doesn't match my driving style around here. So yeah, just from that point on, it allowed me to cool the tyres for a lap longer, and sort of off I went again. But yeah, it was just a shame that Jack managed to get away so quickly. I think maybe if I was up behind him, it probably would have been a different story, but I was using those hybrids to catch him the best as I could, and then ran out of them towards the end, so I thought I'd have to settle for second.
Well, I was going to say it went from your attention forwards to potentially attention backwards, didn't it? With a charging Ethan Hill, we didn't even notice that he was actually, when he crossed the line for the checkered flag, it was only half a second in it. Was there a bit of a sweat on for you in that perspective?
No, I saw him coming, but just going into the chicane at the bottom of the back straight, I was just concerned the back end was getting a little bit tail happy, and I thought I've just got to try and bring it home. I don't want to do anything silly and lose it, so I backed right off. I knew once I'd run out of hybrids, Jack still had some, and I could see him pull him away, so there was no point pushing to try and chase him even more. I think I got the fastest lap anyway, so that was just an extra point, which is what I was after. And then it was sort of just a whole place till then, so I see Ethan coming, but yeah, I just backed off a little bit.
Well, fair play. Congratulations on the second place, Joel. It was a pleasure to have a chat with you, and good luck for next week.
I appreciate it. Have a good one.
Well done to Joel Last. Then second place finish for him in that second race of the evening. We just heard his side of what was a very entertaining battle with Ethan Hill. And Ethan joins us now, third place on the podium, Ethan. And another lively race for you there, really. You were getting stuck in right from the first corner.
Yep, I was sideways for the first corner, in fact. So it was a bit, but I've learnt in front-wheel drive now to bash the throttle and hope for the best, which thankfully seemed to work. I want to apologise also to Jack for the hit into turn 2 on whatever lap it was. I think it was after the safety car. So obviously I had to let him through back then. So obviously, so he could take, obviously not so he could take the win, but I'm pretty sure I helped him just a little bit.
And at least you had the decency to push him back round again. So having got him sideways sort of helped him out of the slide. But that is just the way it is. It's so close at the front of the field, isn't it? Especially in these reverse grid races. I can imagine that it's pretty hectic and almost hard to work out where you are in those early stages. You've got to have eyes in the front, back and the side of your heads, really. And it can be easy sometimes just to slightly trip over someone.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, in race 2, because obviously normally the fast people are at the back, slower-ish people are at the front. So just trying to work your way through best you can. Obviously, race 1 again was just not great. I hit the barrier before Hamilton, or on the inside of Hamilton on lap 1, so I had a red front bumper. So I had no pace in race 1 whatsoever. So I'm happy that again, race 2, I could bring back a podium.
Yeah, great to have you back on the podium. Then your thoughts of perhaps doing the same again next time at Thruxton? It should be a good Honda track, I think.
It should be, but I'm not here. I'm in the Peak District, so I will be watching along, but I won't actually be racing.
Well, okay. What are you doing in the Peak District then? I mean, a lovely part of the world to go and visit, but any particular reason?
It is. My mum's doing a marathon at the weekend, so we're going for like the week beforehand. So it'd be quite nice to just relax a bit.
Oh, fantastic stuff. Well, best of luck to you, Mum. Enjoy your trip, and we'll hopefully see you back for the final couple of weeks. But Ethan, congrats on the podium. Great to have you back in here.
Thank you, Andy. Appreciate that.
So Ethan Hill then completing the podium, and he'll be very, very happy to have notched up his first top 3 finish of the season so far. Right then, let's take a look at what all of this means for the championship standings, because again, once we apply the dropped scores, we can see that things have indeed tightened up. A 16-point advantage for Jack Smith becomes just a 9-point lead now over the closing Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and it's going to be interesting to see whether Elliot can keep that momentum going. Again, we're heading into a track next week that may not favour the BMW so well. In fact, I'd argue a couple of tracks coming up that won't favour the BMW so well. And Dalton-Ayres definitely could still be a championship threat. So too could Kyle Felvis. He is 24 points off the championship lead, but he's had an off night here and should be looking to bounce back at Thruxton next week, with Scott Bugner just a single point behind him, and Gibson a single point further behind Scott in 5th place, so 3rd, 4th and 5th. Covered by just a couple of points. Then it's Lask Martin up to 7th now. He's the best of the Mean Green Racing Team Vauxhalls, with his teammate Axelson in 8th place, 6 points further back, and a further 4 back to Nicky Taylor, the part-timer, if you like, having missed a couple of rounds in 9th. And Andy Dorman still clinging on to a place inside the top 10. But a good night there, really, for Elliot Dalton-Ayres. Didn't win a race, Jack, but closing in nicely on Jack Smith in the points.
Yeah, I think he clawed back 7 points tonight, so it's a big margin, really. And I think if you're actually looking at Felvis, Bugner and Gibson, tonight was their drop score for all three of those drivers. So not only are they that close on points, they had a very, very similar evening to each other as well. And but Gibson was the sort of worst loser out of all four of them. Obviously, tonight it's been a bit of a grim one for Oliver and all of his fans. But I think we've got to have a quick look forward at what else VRRC has got to offer. I'm sort of hoping and praying that that's the next slide. Again, I've sort of half forgotten the running order, but oh well. Lewis has abided and chucked this one on the screen anyway. Obviously, tonight we're at Sneterton. We've got the time attacks in the Lamborghini GT3. We've got the mirror fun race at Monaco. Fun is in inverted brackets in my eyes because Monaco, Christ alive. Then we're at the Thruxton, again, the Temple of Speed, the fastest track in Europe, I believe, for more touring car action next Wednesday until we're hitting the time attacks in the Brabham GT2 round Silverstone GP, which of course we'll be visiting in a few weeks' time for the actual touring car championship. And then there's the Circuit de Catalunya mirror race with the F1 cars. So if you want to get involved in any of that, then there is a link down in the description, and of course you can follow that and it'll take you to either the Discord or I believe the website for VRRC, in which case you can go to the contacts page and get involved, and Rich Hayden will be keen to show you around the Discord and show you what to do to get involved with more of our action here. And if you want to get involved with the touring cars eventually, we'll be more than pleased to have you along for the next championship as well. But plenty to be looking forward to for VRRC. Andy, I think you'll agree.
As always, and something for everyone, as you said, regardless of what your experience or skill level is. I reckon you're going to have to be pretty skilled to handle the cars coming up in our next championship, though, because we are going GT racing again, but with a difference. Not a GTE car or a GT3, but the GT500s that race over in the Super GT Championship in Asia. And appropriately enough, it's an Asian championship taking in 4 racetracks in Japan. We start at the home of the Japanese Grand Prix at Suzuka, then the old home of the Japanese, and I think the Pacific Grand Prix back in the day at Okayama, then Twin Ring Motegi, which has been the home of the Japanese Moto Grand Prix for a while, and then Sugo, that to my knowledge has never hosted a Grand Prix, but is still a fitting place for the final round of the GT500 Championship. So a slightly shorter, slightly more condensed calendar for the GT500s, but Jack, I can't wait to see those things on track and see how our drivers handle them.
No, I think it's another one of those sort of filler series that we're doing, isn't it? A bit like how we've done truck racing, we've done NASCAR racing, and GT500 is sort of, again, the sort of filler series that we're doing. A little bit longer because those have been 3 rounds in the past. This one's 4, and then we'll be going into another championship, which I don't believe has been announced yet, so I won't divulge all. But yeah, it's nice to see that we're going to some cars that are very tricky to drive. It requires some practice, but once you get them, apparently they are extremely fun. I say apparently because I've never even attempted it because I know I wouldn't be able to. But Lewis Edwards assures me that they're brilliant to drive, so he can pretty much drive anything, though. It's a bit annoying. But yeah, the GT500, looking forward to seeing how that gets on. But I think that's about all we've got to go through, isn't it, Andy? I believe all that's left to do is to say goodnight.
It doesn't say that on the running order, though, so I don't know if we're supposed to say... Oh, we have missed something, have we? What have we missed, Lewis? Tell us. Oh, good. Oh, we haven't. There we go. I've just assumed the worst because that's the way that tonight has been going. We are going to go now. You'll be very happy to hear. We're going to find some real professionals to come and fill in for the final 3 weeks of the championship, I think. It has been a pleasure being back, though, this week, and very much looking forward to Thruxton, if Rich allows us, next week, which will take us well into that second half of the season. 6 races to go, 2 drivers perhaps starting to edge away in the championship, but we know at the VRRC that these things can change very, very quickly. So be sure to join us, or whatever commentary team Rich Hayden has in place next week. Hopefully myself and Jack Oliphant back with you again to talk you through the next chapter of the Cammus Simulation Touring Car Championship.